Are you really prepared to face the fact that while you're slaving away to pay off a 30-year mortgage on a shoebox in the suburbs, there are towns in America where you can buy an entire 3-bedroom house for less than the cost of your used Honda Civic? Yeah, I'm not exaggerating. I'm not talking about some shady Craigslist ad or a foreclosure that's one tornado away from becoming splinters. These are real towns, with real houses, where the price tag is so unbelievably low it feels like you're being punked by the universe. And here's the part nobody wants to say out loud: the system doesn't want you to know about these places. Because if you did, you'd pack up tomorrow, ditch the 6-figure debt trap and start living like it's 1992 when homes were actually affordable. But, and this is the gut punch, there's always a catch. Some of these towns smell like soybeans 3 days a week. Some are quiet, too quiet, like horror movie quiet. Others will save you thousands on housing but cost you years off your life in snow shoveling, crime stress, or air conditioning bills that rival car payments. We're talking about places where the houses are cheap, but the trade-offs are hidden in plain sight. Some are charming, some are weird, and some feel like a dare. By the end of this video you'll either be Googling moving trucks or saying no way, that's a scam. But trust me, it's real. These towns exist, they're shockingly affordable, and they're daring you to take a closer look. Number 20. Mission, Texas. You can buy a house for under $100K and still have money left over for a lifetime supply of bug spray. Welcome to the tropics of Texas, where it's hot, cheap, and suspiciously quiet after 10. Mission sits deep in the Rio Grande Valley, a border town with Tex-Mex culture, palm trees, and sunsets that could land a Netflix B-roll gig. It's laid back, vibrant, and wildly affordable. Median home price hovers around $98,000, with the cost of living 24% below the national average. Rent, about $750 for a 2-bedroom with central AC, and trust me, you'll need it. The population of 85,000 is growing thanks to retirees, remote workers, and people who want sunshine 300 days a year. But cheap comes with conditions. The summers are so brutal you'll start carrying backup shirts in your car. Mosquitoes big enough to qualify for voting rights swarm at dusk, and fire ants have a monopoly on your yard. The job market's steady but unremarkable, built on agriculture and healthcare. Crime, safer than most border stereotypes suggest, but still keep your car locked. Mission is paradise with a fine print, AC bills, sweat-soaked laundry piles, and midnight HEB parking lot burnout contest. Number 19. Eagle Pass, Texas. You can snag a home for under $90,000 and literally wave at Mexico from your porch. This border town of 30,000 people is equal parts Texan grit and Mexican flavor. Think ranch houses, endless heat, and a grocery aisle with 47 kinds of salsa. Cost of living sits about 23% below the U.S. average, and rent stays between $650 and $750 for a 2-bedroom. Eagle Pass is one of those towns cable news loves to sensationalize, but the truth is it's safer than most big cities. Crime rates here are lower than Austin's and laughably lower than Baltimore's. A 2023 survey even ranked Eagle Pass safer than 60% of U.S. cities its size. But perception matters, and you'll get raised eyebrows when you tell outsiders you live here. The real danger: forgetting sunscreen and melting your phone on the dashboard. Life here is quiet, affordable, and weirdly wholesome, unless you count the drivers. One guy did a 3-point turn inside a Dairy Queen drive-thru while eating churros. You get scorching summers, mariachi music drifting from backyards, and tacos so good they ruin your standards forever. Eagle Pass isn't dangerous, it's just misunderstood and dirt cheap. Number 18. Springfield, Illinois. The land of Lincoln, budget cuts, and houses so cheap, you'll think you stumbled onto a glitch in Zillow. The state capital has a median home price of about $100,000. That's 20% below the national cost of living, in a city where your neighbor might be a state senator or at least someone who works in the building. Government, healthcare, and education fuel the job market, so employment is relatively steady. But here's the fine print: crime. Springfield's violent crime rate is double the national average, making it one of the most dangerous mid-sized cities in Illinois. Property crime, equally high. So yes, you might buy a historic home with a screened porch, but you'll also need floodlights and reinforced locks. The vibe is strange. It's technically a capital city, but socially it feels like your uncle's backyard barbecue stretched across 60 square miles. Weather doesn't help either. Winters are harsh, summers are muggy, and spring brings thunderstorms that sound like cannon fire. Springfield is the city where Lincoln rests, where state politics drag on forever, and where you can own a house for the cost of a Tesla tire set if you can put up with sirens. Number 17, Warren, Michigan. You can own a house for less than your Brooklyn rent deposit, about $99,000 on average. It's Michigan's third largest city, but don't expect glamour. Warren is a blue-collar suburb north of Detroit built on auto plants, defense contracts, and strip malls that refuse to die. Cost of living, 20% below national average, with rents between $800 for trade jobs and factory work. Warren is a lifeline. For creatives or remote techies, well, good luck. The dark side, crime. Warren's violent crime rate is 47% higher than the national average, with property crime like stolen bikes and porch pirates keeping Ring doorbells in business. The weather punishes everyone equally, and the potholes look like training grounds for monster trucks. But the upside is community. Neighbors who shovel your driveway without asking, loan you tools, and then tell you every single detail about their raccoon infestation. Social life is modest. Tim Hortons coffee, hockey games, and complaining about snowplows that never arrive. Warren is affordable survival, houses with garages, jobs that pay the bills, and winters that remind you life is hard. Cheap living here isn't glamorous, but it's real, and real comes with salt stains. Number 16, Flint, Michigan, where homes are cheaper than your college textbooks. The median price is $69,000, making it one of the cheapest housing markets in the country. Rent $700 a month. Cost of living sits 27% below the U.S. average, so on paper it's paradise. But Flint's story is infamous. Water crisis headlines, crumbling infrastructure, and crime rates that rank among the nation's highest. Violent crime is 4 times the national average, and property crime keeps insurance companies busy. Yet oddly, there's a revival happening. Downtown Flint has art galleries, a mural tour, and a coffee scene that's surprisingly good. Young people and artists are moving in, turning boarded-up buildings into creative hubs. Still, the risk is real. You'll save on your mortgage, but pay in stress, home repairs, and possibly security bars. Roads? Forget it. Flint's potholes are geological wonders, swallowing entire tires like they're snacks. Public trust issues run deep, and the city carries scars from economic collapse. But here's the catch. If you're tough, resourceful, and willing to gamble, Flint is a real estate jackpot. For the price of an iPhone, you could own a whole house. Just be ready for raccoons, crime, and cautious optimism. Rent around $8. Cost of living sits 22% below the national average. Toledo is a strange hybrid, part Rust Belt grit, part up-and-coming redevelopment. On the plus side, it has one of the top-ranked zoos in the nation, a minor league hockey team, and enough pierogies to keep your carb cravings satisfied for life. But crime is still rough. Violent crime sits at double the national average, and property theft is common. The job market is modest, driven by healthcare, education, and manufacturing. You'll live cheap, but you'll also deal with flooding, potholes, and neighborhoods that swing between charming and sketchy on the same block. Toledo drivers, absolute chaos. Yellow lights are challenges, not warnings, and someone will definitely U-turn in a school zone while eating ribs. The weather doesn't help either. Unpredictable snow, swampy summers, and humidity so thick you can drink it. Toledo is cheap, quirky, and frustrating all at once. But if you can stomach broken sidewalks, surprise crime, and endless potholes, it's one of the last U.S. cities where affordability still exists. But behind the pop culture fame is a city where the median home costs just $110,000 and rent is $8. That's a 20% discount below the national cost of living, and yet somehow nobody brags about it. Why? Because Scranton is a working-class city that never fully recovered after coal jobs evaporated in the 1980s. The economy limps along on healthcare, logistics, and whatever remote gig you can smuggle in on the Wi-Fi. Crime is average, not terrifying, but property theft keeps you alert. Weather: classic Northeast chaos, freezing winters, muddy springs, and humid summers where you sweat through your shirt by noon. Downtown is a patchwork of old brick buildings, thrift stores and vape shops with hand-painted signs. The vibe is gruff but sweet, like a musty uncle who secretly bakes cookies. You'll save thousands on housing, but you'll also inherit potholes so deep they've got zip codes. And yes, locals will remind you daily that The Office wasn't filmed here. Scranton is affordability with personality, sarcastic neighbors, weirdly good diners, and homes that don't require selling a kidney. It's real, raw, and unexpectedly lovable, if you can handle the dust. Perfect. Let's keep the countdown rolling in the same conversational, over-the-top style packed with data and those what details. Here's number 13, Rochester, New York, a city where you can buy a 4-bedroom Victorian for $107,000, and then immediately spend another $1,000 on snow shovels. Once the pride of Kodak, Xerox, and Bausch & Lomb, Rochester was an industrial giant. Now, it's a city forever trying to reinvent itself after the jobs fled. Median rent sits at about $900 a month, and the cost of living is 25% below the national average. On paper, that's incredible. The job market is patchy. Healthcare and higher education dominate, thanks to the University of Rochester and Rochester Institute of Technology. There's a surprisingly solid food scene, and downtown has microbreweries, art walks, and just enough gentrification to make you say okay maybe. But here's the catch. Snow, over 100 inches per year, winter is relentless, and lake effect storms feel like Mother Nature's personal grudge match. Seasonal depression rates skyrocket, and you'll own more salt than grocery. Crime is also elevated. Violent crime sits at double the national average in certain zip codes. Rochester is equal parts charming and exhausting. Imagine sipping locally roasted coffee while your pipes freeze solid. Affordable, absolutely. Comfortable, only if you own snow boots as big as your mortgage savings. Number 12, St. Louis, Missouri, the city where you can buy a home for $110,000 and inherit either a charming brick bungalow or a porch chair that hasn't moved since. Cost of living here is 18% below the national average, and rent hovers at $925 for a 2-bedroom. Jobs, surprisingly solid in healthcare, aerospace, and education. But here's where it gets dicey. Crime. Some neighborhoods are safe, charming, and family-friendly. Others, straight-up grand theft auto. Violent crime rates in certain zip codes are 420% above the national average. No exaggeration. That means 2 blocks can be the difference between sipping craft beer in your garden and listening to sirens all night. Still, St. Louis has real perks. The food scene is criminally underrated. Toasted ravioli and barbecue that rivals Kansas City. The architecture is stunning. Rows of old red brick homes that feel like historic treasures if they're still standing. But the city's infrastructure is crumbling. Potholes are endless and drivers are ruthless. One guy made a left turn from the right lane while texting and nobody blinked. St. Louis is a gamble. Buy cheap, pick the right neighborhood and you're golden. Pick wrong and you'll be starring in your own crime docu-series. Number 11. Detroit, Michigan, the only U.S. city where you can still buy a house for $1 if you're willing to also inherit the entire raccoon population. Median home price is $66,000, with the cost of living nearly 30% below the national average. Rent sits at $950 for a 2-bedroom, though that varies wildly by neighborhood. Detroit's story is infamous. Once the Motor City, then economic collapse, abandoned blocks, and a water crisis. But here's the twist. Detroit is rebooting. Downtown has tech startups, boutique coffee shops, lofts, and stadiums drawing people back in. Outside of that core, it's still rough. Violent crime remains among the nation's highest, and property theft is practically a pastime. The infrastructure is also crumbling. Potholes big enough to eat a Prius, and electrical theft that leaves whole blocks in the dark. But if you're bold, the opportunity is insane. Entire homes go for less than a down payment in Chicago. Artists, hustlers, and entrepreneurs are buying in, betting on the comeback. Detroit is chaos wrapped in affordability. You'll save thousands on housing, but you'll also need bars on your windows and patience with a city that feels like it's constantly in therapy. Number 10. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the city that glowed orange from steel mills in the 1940s and now glows from Google servers and robotics labs. Median home price, $7. Rent, $1,150 for a 2-bedroom. Cost of living is still 10% below the U.S. average. which is shocking, given this place has transformed into a tech hub. Google, Uber, Duolingo, they're all here along with top universities and medical centers. The economy is booming, but the real estate never caught up to the Silicon Valley inflation curve. Pittsburgh is underrated. Professional sports teams, gorgeous rivers and bridges, over 40 of them, more than Venice, and cultural perks like Carnegie museums. But the downsides are real. Crime varies block to block, weather is unpredictable, and the street grid is so confusing GPS just shrugs. Also, drivers merge using nothing but psychic energy. One local swears if you haven't backed down a 45-tizy driveway in reverse at 6 a.m., you haven't lived. Pittsburgh is a hidden gem for affordable living with world-class perks, but if you can't handle fog, potholes, or people screaming "Go Steelers" at funerals, it might break you. Number 9. Memphis. Memphis, Tennessee, where you can buy a house for $118,000 and still afford barbecue that ruins your willpower. Cost of living is 17% below the national average, and rent sits under $1,000 for most two-bedroom units. Jobs revolve around logistics, healthcare, and FedEx headquarters, making Memphis a working-class powerhouse. But here's the shadow side: crime. Violent crime rates are among the highest in the nation, and package theft is practically part of the culture. Yet Memphis has something money can't buy: soul. It's the birthplace of rock and roll and blues, and the live music scene is unmatched. The food, outrageous. You'll eat ribs that make you cry, fried catfish that rewrites your standards, and biscuits that feel illegal. Memphis is gritty, messy, and alive. The houses are cheap because the city's reputation is rough, but neighborhoods like Cooper Young are growing, drawing in creatives and investors. Drivers though, chaos incarnate. Red lights are suggestions. Walmart parking lots double as stunt shows. Still, you'll never feel bored. Memphis gives you real estate bargains and music in the air. It's high risk, high reward. If you can live with the chaos, you'll live like a king. Number 8. McAllen, Texas, a sun-drenched border city where a house still costs under $100,000. And your biggest enemy is the humidity. Median home price, $98,000. Rent, about $850 for a two-bedroom. Cost of living is 22% below the U.S. average. Crime, surprisingly low for a border town, safer than Houston or Dallas by most metrics. The city thrives on healthcare, retail, and cross-border trade, but remote work has also made it a magnet for people chasing sunshine and low bills. Here's what nobody tells you: McAllen is peaceful, almost suspiciously so. The social scene feels like a Hallmark movie with tacos, but step outside in July and it's a different story. Triple-digit heat, 70% humidity, and mosquitoes big enough to steal your lunch. Air conditioners fight daily wars, and you'll sweat through 3 shirts before noon. On the plus side, the food is unbeatable. Tex-Mex so good you'll forget chain restaurants exist, and the community is absurdly friendly. Strangers wave, neighbors bring tamales, and everyone calls you Micho before 9 a.m. McAllen is cheap, wholesome, and a little too hot to handle. Paradise, as long as you can survive with sweat as a permanent accessory. Number 7. Waycross, Georgia. The only place where you can buy a 3-bedroom house for $85,000 and your neighbor might actually be a gator. Cost of living, a jaw-dropping 25% below national average. Rent, about $700 for a 2-bedroom. Waycross sits at the edge of the Okefenokee Swamp, which basically means your backyard could double as a National Geographic documentary. The job market is slim, centered around railroads, agriculture, and the occasional manufacturing gig. Crime, moderate, but your real problem is more likely to be raccoons in your trash than burglars. Social life is, let's say, humble. The Waffle House is a second city hall, and your nightlife options are either bonfires or Dollar General, but the charm is undeniable. Neighbors call you Han before sunrise, and Friday nights mean barbecue smoke hanging over the town like a blanket. Downsides, humidity so thick you feel shrink-wrapped, mosquitoes with visible muscles, and a downtown that looks like the set of The Walking Dead. Still, the peace is priceless. You'll never hear sirens, just cicadas, crickets, and maybe a shotgun blast during deer season. Waycross is cheap, weird, and wildly authentic. Affordability with swamp seasoning, and tucks in with a glass of warm milk. Median home price, just under 9. Rent, around $750 for a 2-bedroom. That's 20% below the national cost of living in a place where crime is so low that a loose raccoon makes the newspaper. Jobs come from healthcare, education and manufacturing, but nobody here's racing to build the next tech unicorn. Life is slow, quiet and oddly wholesome. Downsides, the weather. Hermitage sits deep in the snow belt, averaging 100+ inches per year, which means snowblowers aren't optional, they're family heirlooms. Social life is modest, and Wi-Fi feels like it's powered by hamster wheels. The mall technically exists, but feels like a post-apocalyptic set piece. Still, this is a place where neighbors shovel your driveway unasked, and strike up daily porch conversations. You'll save money like crazy, but you'll also trade nightlife for frozen pipe. Imagine waking up to fresh snow, sipping cocoa on a plaid blanket, while your neighbor waves from his snowblower. Hermitage isn't flashy, it's financially stress-free but socially frozen in time. Perfect if your dream is peace, snow and a mortgage smaller than your phone bill. Number 5. Platte City, Missouri. Platte City, Missouri, a town that sounds like an Old West outpost but actually sits just north of Kansas City. Median home price, $150. Rent, around $800. Cost of living, 14% below the national average. This is a starter pack suburb. Schools, parks, little league games and at least 3 neighbors who mow their lawns in patterns for sport. Crime is lowish, usually porch pirates or teenagers being dumb. You're 25 minutes from Kansas City, which is either a perk or a punishment depending on whether you like commuting. But here's the truth. Platte City is quiet, almost too quiet. The social scene is Dairy Queen, Dollar General or the occasional church bake sale. Want Target? Pack snacks. It's a road trip. Roads themselves, built by chaos, sharp turns, random dips, and more construction cones than people. Still, the houses are cheap, the schools are solid, and the neighbors wave whether you want them to or not. Life here is calm, affordable, and maybe a little boring. Picture this: sipping sweet tea on your porch swing, watching a lifted truck crawl past with lawnmowers strapped to the bed. Platte City isn't glamorous, but it's stable, and stability is cheap. Number 4. Atchison Village. Now for a plot twist. Atchison Village, California. Yes, you heard that right, California. In the Bay Area, no less. Tucked inside Richmond, Atchison is a World War II-era housing co-op, where homes go for around. That's a rounding error in San Francisco. HOA fees, about $400 a month, but that includes water, garbage, and insurance. The catch: you don't buy property, you buy into the cooperative, which means the land is collectively owned. Decisions about everything, trash bins, blinds, even exterior paint, are made by the co-op board. Jobs are nearby. San Francisco is 40 minutes by BART, but the surrounding Richmond area still struggles with crime, violent crime. 1100. Atchison Village itself feels frozen in 1943. Identical little cottages, manicured lawns, and neighbors who know exactly when you forgot trash day. It's oddly utopian, but also strict. You gain cheap Bay Area housing but sacrifice privacy and full ownership. Imagine finally escaping $4,000 rent in San Francisco, only to get scolded by your neighbor for using the wrong window curtains. Still, if you can stomach WWI-era bylaws and Richmond's crime stats, Atchison is California's weirdest loophole. Mortgage freedom with side-eye. Number 3. Yankton, South Dakota. The Missouri River's sleepy secret. Median home price, $200. Rent, $900 for a 2-bedroom. Cost of living, 16% below national average. At first glance, that doesn't sound dirt cheap compared to Flint or Detroit, but here's the kicker. Yankton gives you small-town safety with actual quality of life. Crime rates are half the national average, and the vibe is Norman Rockwell meets Facebook arguments about deer season. Jobs are steady, healthcare, manufacturing, and blue-collar trades, but don't expect a booming tech hub. Social life is slow, karaoke at the VFW, gas station pizza and maybe darts at the one bar in town. Still, summers by the river are magic, fishing, boating, and neighbors who wave like it's a sacred ritual. Downsides: winter is brutal, internet lags behind, and young people move to Sioux Falls the second they crave a Trader Joe's. But if peace, safety and cheap mortgages matter more than nightlife, Yankton is paradise. Picture waking up to geese honking over the river, sipping coffee on your porch, and realizing you've dodged both inflation and crime. Affordable, quiet, and oddly wholesome, Yankton is a cheat code for cheap living with sanity intact. Number 2. Price, Utah. A desert town where homes cost less than rent in Los Angeles,
and the nightlife is alphabetizing your pantry. Median home price, 200 and rent, 800. Cost of living, 18% below the national average. Crime, low. Violent crime sits well below the U.S. average. And your biggest worry is probably a mountain lion wandering too close to your trash bins. Jobs, stable-ish. Coal, fossils, forklifts, and small-town retail. Internet, spotty. Social scene, slim to none. A Redditor once wrote, "If you're under 40 and not into rodeo, you'll die of boredom." That about sums it up. But the affordability is real. Mortgages here are laughably low, property taxes are peanuts, and groceries won't break you. Downsides, weather swings between blazing summers and icy winters. Restaurants, 2 Subways, a Taco Bell, and a diner that closes if the cook's niece has a recital. Still, price is serene. Imagine sipping coffee on your porch while the desert sky turns neon orange. No traffic, no crime, no chaos, just silence and scenery. Cheap living here feels like stepping into 1987, but with Wi-Fi that occasionally works. If affordability is king, price is the crown jewel. The Motor City deserves the crown because no other U.S. city can touch its extremes. Yes, you can buy a house here for $1. Median home price, $66,000. Cost of living, 30% below the U.S. average. Rent, under $1,000 for a 2-bedroom. Jobs, Detroit's reboot is real. Tech startups, real estate investment, and an art scene that's booming downtown. But just 2 blocks away, it's still fallout mode. Abandoned homes, stolen copper wiring, and violent crime rates among the highest in the country. Driving here is an Olympic sport. Potholes aren't potholes, they're portals. The city itself is a paradox. Cheap homes, dangerous streets, stunning murals, crumbling infrastructure, and world-class food. Detroit is gritty, messy, and defiant. If you're tough, entrepreneurial, or just fearless, you can flip a $5,000 house into a $100,000 property. But it's not for the faint-hearted. Imagine buying a home cheaper than a used iPhone, painting it yourself, planting tomatoes in the backyard, and listening to Motown while a raccoon the size of a bulldog struts by. That's Detroit, the cheapest, riskiest, and most fascinating housing market in America.